So here we have level 2. This is the most complex level that we're going to go to. So as you can see, the complexity has increased in the diagram somewhat. So at level 2, we're looking into the individual versions of the components. We're looking at actual processes that happen, not just between external systems and our toe, but also within the toe itself. So we're talking about how these services interact with the OS. And for the first time in this process, we're going to look at the physical interfaces. So on this diagram, you see the attackers flows to the physical, the end user ones I've left off just to reduce the noise in the diagram. But as you can see, the web server interacts with the application logic, which interacts with the local storage. So we get a complete other view of the system. We're not talking abstractly anymore. We're looking in a lot of detail. So here we have the same diagram for our ICS device. Here we can see processes and how they interact with each other. We've got our trust boundaries and our trust zones marked, although they're not so crucial at the stage of level 2 because we've gone past that, and we're looking at processes that talk to each other within these trust zones even. So threat modeling at level 2, what are we looking for? We're looking for the exposed services. We want to get their versions as well, which we can get from the SBOM. We also want to look for CVEs that the firmware scan found for us. We want to look for vulnerable application logic, which is shown in the firmware report as the issues. So these are the problems in the code. We want to look for secrets that might be hidden, for example, hard-coded passwords. And we also want to look at possible hardware attack paths. Does the device have a SD card? What happens if we take the SD card out and try and access it from a different machine? So we can again take the COM matrix and extend it one more time to put the versions of our services in there. And then we're going to take another tool from Bunkai, which is the port scan. And we're going to be able to, with that, we're going to be able to confirm the points of entry, and we might even find some others that we haven't documented yet. At this stage, we also can look at the cryptographic details. For example, if we've got an encrypted communication, how strong is that encrypted communication? Are we using a low TLS version that's not really giving us as much protection as we need? And of course, we're going to analyze the physical interfaces. Can we access the UART? Can we dump the firmware? So for gathering evidence in Bunkai at this stage, we can run this active port scan. So it's a live port scan. It'll identify the exposed services. You can do a vulnerability scan with it. You can grab your banners and versions. So we can correlate this live scan with the documented information that we have in the SBOM. And the reason we want to do this is because often there are components like automatically built and services built into the firmware during the build process that are never actually used, right? So they show in the SBOM, but they're not actually like turned on. So this can help us to refine and sort of weed out some of the superfluous CVEs that we might have, and to be able to more closely pinpoint the actual threats for our device. So we can also run the encryption scan from Bunkai. Our IoT GOAT example has only unencrypted traffic, so that's not helpful there. But with the encrypted web server on the ICS device, we can check which version of TLS is running. We can check if there's any weak cipher suites and check how it's running in a live system. So as you see, that we can go back to the SBOM and we can note our versions down, and we're correlating the port scan with the SBOM and justifying each item in our level 2 diagram. So the firmware report that we get from OneKey is fairly comprehensive. We have several different sections to it. First of all, like there's an issues tab, which is about the mistakes in the code, basically. So misconfiguration, hard-coded accounts, hard-coded passwords. We've got the CVE list. CVEs is the publicly acknowledged known vulnerabilities for these specific service versions, right? So the CVEs tend to be linked to the version of SSH or the version of Dropbear. Then firmware report also gives us a list of components, the installed binaries and their versions. We get information about the cryptography and the keys, and then we get an overview of the management profiles. So for example, here are some of the issues that came out when I ran the IoT Goat software through the firmware tool. We have a hard-coded account password. We've got an insecure Dropbear service, which of course, and we've got command injection in the code. We've even got some malicious software there. And in contrast, here we have the CVEs, and as you can see, they are directly corresponding to a specific version of the service. And as you can see, we can get multiple CVEs for just one service as well. But once again, as I mentioned before, it's really important to confirm that these services are actually being used by the system. And then the final part of the firmware report is the management protocols. So this can also give us some information. Then we come to the physical layer. The first step of this is to just look at the device. What can we see? What access, what ports are there? Do we have a UART? Do we have an SD card? We can try and connect to the UART. We can try and mount the SD card and look how this can be physically bypassed. So we've gathered a whole lot of information, and then we can identify our data flows. So here's the diagram I showed for IoT before, and you can see that I've labeled each of these data flows, even within the system. And then we can use these data flows to again map to our stride points. But we have another tool at this stage. We have all the information from the firmware report as well. So as you might imagine, we can get a bunch of stride threats here related to the CVEs that we've found, related to the issues that we've found. And important to note here as well is that it's not just about getting one item for every stride letter. You want to keep going until you can't think of it anymore. You can see we've got 1 point for spoofing here, but 4 points for information disclosure. This can be one of the most challenging parts of threat modeling, is knowing when you've gone far enough, because we only have limited time to secure these devices, but an attacker has unlimited time and resources. So this is, don't rush through it, because it's important that we take the time, because somebody else is inevitably going to take much more time than we did. So then we're going to look at mapping stride to MITRE attack. We start with the stride threat. If you're more experienced, you might just be able to map them directly, but I found it really useful to think of some keywords and to think of some words around the subject, and to start looking on that basis and just pick the closest matching technique that you can find from the list. So here we have one example for our unencrypted HTTP flow. It can lead to information disclosure because anyone sniffing on the local LAN can see the traffic. So we've got the keywords clear text, network, sniffing, HTTP, unencrypted, web, etc., etc. And it leads us to this network sniffing topic. MITRE also gives us some mitigations. Mitigation is the way to prevent it happening, or the solution to the problem. So as you can see, there's several different ways that we can secure this. We could introduce multi-factor authentication. We could introduce encryption. but maybe that's not possible. And that's why, for this reason, there are several solutions suggested. So similarly, I mentioned before that MITRE embed is a little more simple to use. Here we can see if we click on that the device has a microprocessor, we automatically get 4 different possible attacks suggested. So I would recommend checking out both tools, seeing what works best for you. If you've got less experience, I would recommend starting with MITRE embed, as it's more easy to understand. So that comes to the end of the threat modeling stage. At the end of the threat modeling stage, we've got this huge list of possible attacks, right? So maybe per stride threat that we identified, we've even got multiple MITRE attacks coming off it. It can be a really extensive list. So the next stage is to go into the risk assessment, which is about prioritizing these threats. So here is a really useful tool, which is the CVSS calculator. You can look, it's also a good visual illustration of how threats kind of work. So we start with the attack vector. Do we need to be in the local network, or can we do it from the other side of the world, theoretically? Is the attack really complex? Does somebody need a lot of knowledge? Or can it be just anybody who knows enough to be able to download and run an exploit? Do we need some kind of pre-existing privileges in the system? Or can we do it without any privileges at all? And then the other point is, does it require user interaction? A perfect example of this is phishing. Do we need somebody to click on something to make it happen? Do we need an admin to log into their system in order to trigger it? Or is there no interaction required at all? So, and then the points on the bottom part of it relate more to the impact of the attack. So is it going to change something in our system? Is it going to affect the confidentiality? Is it going to affect the integrity of the system, and also the availability? So all of these elements come together in the score, but we can also use the individual elements, because at this stage what is most important to us is the likelihood and the severity. The likelihood, how feasible is it that an attacker is going to go to the required amount of effort, depending on how much the effort is, to actually go and execute this attack. This kind of gives us a probability of it actually happening. And then the other part of it is the impact. If the attack is executed, what are the consequences? How disastrous is it for us? So here we have a couple of completed entries for our IoT device. We can see we've got the level that we identified the stride category at, and we've got the stride category itself. We've got the description of the threat. We've got the stride threat. We've got the evidence, which led us to coming to this conclusion. We've got some keywords which we used to search in MITRE. We've got our MITRE technique. With confidence is an important thing. How sure are we that this is really a relevant attack? And what is our mitigation that we got from MITRE, or maybe implemented ourselves? And then we have these 2 values which I was talking before, the likelihood of the attack happening and the impact of it happening. And then from that we can work out the severity. And then we can order our threats and decide we wanted to definitely deal from the top down, from the most serious threats onwards. So where this confidence field comes into play is that we want to validate this model. So a good way to do that is with peer review. We send it to an expert, get some second opinions, maybe send it to the people the engineers who actually designed it. And the other important thing that we take away after we've finished this whole process is that when updates and changes happen to the device, that we sufficiently document them and work them into our threat model as well. So this is not just a one-off process. We're setting ourselves up in the very beginning stages of our design process to be able to take this threat modeling all the way through. Maybe through the course of development of the project, some decisions get made, some changes get made, come back to the threat model and reevaluate if you're maybe changing something there. So that's what I've got to share with you today. And thank you all very much for your attention. And I hope you enjoyed the first installment of the CRACademy.